Barbara sat heavily on the freezing wooden bench outside the private dental clinic and wept openly. It was the very first time she had cried in 3 long years, ever since Vic passed away. She wasn't crying from the physical agony of the loose porcelain bridge rocking violently in her lower jaw, but from the brutal, unforgiving arithmetic. The fancy dentist had just handed her a glossy treatment plan for $6,500. She stared blindly at the paper, gripping her worn leather purse until her knuckles turned white. She had exactly $38 left in her checking account. 34 grueling years working on the overcrowded hospital wards, 34 years of saving lives, and this was her ultimate reward. Total financial ruin. She aggressively dried her wet face and yanked on a pair of blue nitrile gloves she kept in her bag out of sheer habit. She was off to scrub a total stranger's filthy apartment. Have you ever felt totally abandoned after a lifetime of hard work? Tell us in the comments, where are you exactly from, and does your basic social security check genuinely stretch to the end of the month? Hit that like button right now so this story reaches everyone absolutely terrified of the crippling cost of living. Because what this desperate retired nurse did next didn't just bend the rules, it utterly shattered them, turning her hidden poverty into a ruthless, highly profitable cash enterprise. The rotting tooth woke Barbara violently at 4 in the morning. It was a dull, pressing agony that shot straight from her lower jaw up to her temple, throbbing perfectly in time with her racing heartbeat, steady and vicious, as if the pain had absolutely nowhere else to be. She lay frozen on her side, her palm pressed hard to her cheek, breathing shallowly, desperately waiting for the inflamed muscle to release. 3 agonizing minutes. 5. 7. The sharp pain finally settled into a vile, low hum that she knew would stay until noon, return at night, and remind her that the expensive bridge fitted 11 years ago was now a dangerous liability. It was rocking sickeningly on 2 anchor teeth that had been quietly dying underneath the porcelain since September. She sat up and blindly found one slipper, then dragged the other from under the heavy dresser with her bare toes. Bending over sent a fierce wire of pain straight to her ear. She had perfected this pathetic maneuver over 2 miserable months of mornings that started with physical pain, lost slippers, and the dark thought that 63 felt less like a simple age and more like a grim prison sentence. Passing the bathroom mirror, she aggressively looked away. The exhausted woman staring back had the defeated posture of someone who had entirely stopped expecting good news and had arranged her sagging shoulders accordingly. She stood by the freezing kitchen window, eating cheap oatmeal made strictly with tap water. Milk prices had shot up again, and the butter ran out 3 days ago. Buying more before her Social Security cleared on Friday was a luxury her brutal budget simply vetoed. She chewed carefully on the right side, taking tiny, terrified bites, the way you eat when your mouth contains a broken device that might catastrophically collapse at any wrong angle. The left side had been strictly off limits for months. She even drank her hot tea tilted weirdly to the right. Looking completely odd was a social price she had entirely stopped calculating. She opened the cracked phone screen to check her notes. Her entire survival plan lived there now, updated weekly because paper notebooks cost actual money. Social Security, $1,360. Rent for the damp apartment, $850. Crucial Medicare copays for her blood pressure pills plus bone supplements, $210. Groceries, barely $250. That meant surviving strictly on store-brand oats, clearance sticker chicken thighs, cheap potatoes, and maybe a single bruised apple once a week because her failing thyroid didn't forgive skipping fruit. Utilities, water, and soaring heating bills, $220. Total out, $1,780. Remainder, minus $420. She was utterly scraping the barrel. She stared at the terrifying -420 and thought, Lord, I am $400 in the hole before I have even bought a tube of toothpaste. And toothpaste is the absolute least of my problems, since the teeth themselves are rotting out of my skull. She quickly closed the app and called her son, Andy. He worked brutal shifts at the steel mill upstate, and he answered with the loud clatter of a filthy break room behind him. Andy, the bridge needs replacing urgently. The private dentist wants $6,500, out of pocket. A heavy, suffocating silence followed. In that terrible pause was the specific mental math adult children do when they desperately love their parent, but simply cannot afford to prove it. Mum, we've got the massive mortgage. Marina is on maternity leave. The 2 kids. Maybe after the quarterly bonus? Maybe. Barbara knew exactly what that word meant from Andy. It meant he would try, and trying would instantly run into the car payment, the expensive diapers, and some unexpected emergency that would eagerly eat whatever cash remained. Don't worry about it, she muttered, and hung up, which was much kinder than screaming the truth. On her chipped windowsill sat a massive box of blue nitrile clinical gloves. 200 count, bought in bulk from a medical supply website, out of a professional habit so deep it was practically geological. 34 years of aggressively snapping them on before every damn IV drip, every blood draw, every infectious wound dressing. She hadn't worked a ward shift in 3 years, but the gloves stayed. She wore them for absolutely everything now, doing the dishes, scrubbing the tub. Not from squeamishness, but because without them, her bare hands felt dangerously exposed, vulnerable in a harsh place that demanded absolute toughness. That evening, her old hospital colleague Gail called in an absolute panic. Gail had retired 3 years ago and was renting out her late mother's apartment on Airbnb. Barb, total disaster. The last guest checked out and the apartment is an absolute wreck. Filthy sheets, grease everywhere, a disgusting bathroom. The new guests arrive at 10. I've twisted my ankle on the porch and I can barely walk. Can you please go and clean it? I will pay you $150 cash. $150. Barbara lay perfectly still on the sofa with a hot water bottle pressed hard against her jaw and ran the brutal numbers. $150 was nearly 4 months of her terrifying budget gap. It was 5 full trips to the cheap supermarket. It was also 2 hours locked in a stranger's filthy apartment, cleaning up after arrogant people she would never meet, wearing the exact same clinical gloves she used to wear for medical procedures that literally saved lives. The humiliating distance between an IV line and a dirty toilet brush felt utterly enormous. But it was also perfectly measurable in exactly $150. Text me the address, she said flatly. The apartment was a cramped second-floor box. Barbara unlocked the front door with Gail's spare key and stood frozen on the threshold. The foul stench hit her instantly. Stale cigarette smoke, fried grease, and sour beer soaked deep into the cheap carpet. The kitchen stove was violently splattered with fat. The bathroom floor was covered in wet towels and thick, dark hair. Barbara felt the exact same clinical disgust she used to feel walking into a chaotic hospital ward after a brutal night shift. 97 minutes until the new guests arrived. She set down her bag, pulled out the blue gloves and snapped them on. The sharp pop echoed loudly in the silent room. Her shift had officially begun. First, remove the contaminated materials, linens, towels, trash. Then the dry work, dusting top to bottom. Then the wet surfaces. Doorknobs required exactly 30 seconds of pure disinfectant contact time to kill staph bacteria. Hospital protocol didn't magically expire just because she was in an apartment. Then the glass, checked at an angle exactly the way she used to check test tubes for turbidity. Finally, the floors. 18 strict clinical steps assembled perfectly in her mind. 90 minutes later, the filthy apartment was totally transformed. beds made with razor-sharp hospital corners, faucets gleaming perfectly under the harsh lights, carpets completely spotless. She peeled off the contaminated gloves, bagged them securely, and locked the door. Gail called the very next morning, utterly stunned. "Barb, what on earth did you do to that place? They left a massive 5-star review. Spotless, like a hospital, not a single speck of dust. I have never, ever had a 5-star cleaning review." Barbara listened quietly. The phrase 5 stars felt totally bizarre. But she checked her banking app. $150 sat safely in her account. In medical terms, spotless meant sterile. In hospitality, it meant cash. Gail called the next day with a proposal. Businesslike now, ankle elevated, calculator voice. "Barb, listen. I get 4, 5 turnovers a week, sometimes 6. Every one needs cleaning. I've been doing it myself, but my ankle, and honestly, even before the ankle. I'm 61, my back, you know? You cleaned that apartment better than I've ever cleaned anything. Permanent deal, $150 per turnover after every checkout." $150? 4 to 5 times a week. Barbara did the math while Gail talked. The habit of a woman who'd spent 34 years calculating drip rates, where every drop was money the hospital didn't have. $600 a week, $2,400 a month. Minus supplies, her own professional grade, because what Gail had been using Barbara wouldn't touch with someone else's gloves. About $150 a month. Net, roughly $2,250. Almost a second social security check. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow. Checkouts at 11, new guests at 3. 4 hours." She started. Second turnover, same apartment, same post-guest chaos. Only now without panic, just working calm. Gloves, cloth, solution, sequence. The 18 steps ran through her body while her mind counted other things. The payment plan, the teeth, how many turnovers to cover the first installment. By the third apartment, she'd stopped thinking about the math and started noticing something else. The rhythm felt familiar. Not the cleaning itself, the structure. Arrive, assess, execute, verify, leave. It was a shift. Not a hospital shift, but a shift. With a start time and an end time, and a standard that either met or didn't. And Barbara's standard met. Within 10 days, Gail's rating climbed from 4.3 to 4.8. And Gail raised her nightly price by $15, openly. "Barb, your hands are worth $15 a night to me. Be offended or be proud, your choice." Barbara was neither. She was busy. But that evening, wiping down her own kitchen counter at home, without gloves for once, she noticed her fingers smelled of lemon disinfectant instead of the usual nothing. And the smell stayed, and it smelled like work. And work was a word she hadn't applied to herself in 3 years. Andy found out through Marina, who heard from Gail's daughter, who posted something in a family chat. Small towns. A secret survives exactly as long as it takes to cross one acquaintance, which is about 12 hours.
"Mum, Marina says you're cleaning Airbnbs? After strangers?" "After guests. And yes." "Mum, you're a nurse. 34 years. And now you're mopping floors." "Mopping floors pays $500 a month toward the teeth you can't help me fix. Not blaming you, Andy, but if I don't mop, in 6 months I'll be eating soup through a straw." Silence. The breath of a man who'd been handed a fact armoured with numbers, and numbers don't flinch. He muttered, "Okay, Mum, you know best," and hung up. Barbara sat in the kitchen looking at the gloves on the windowsill and thinking that "cleaning lady," in her son's voice, had sounded the same as failure, and that neither gloves, nor years, nor 5-star reviews could cushion that sound.
But she didn't think long. At 6, Gail called again, excited. "Barb, remember the guy who asked who cleans for me? I gave him your number. Ian Harlan. 4 Airbnb units downtown. Looking for a cleaner. Says he's tired of being embarrassed by his ratings." 4 units. Barbara stood at the phone and counted. Couldn't help it. 4 at 150, 3 per day average, 18 days a month. And the number that came out made her multiply again because she didn't believe it the first time. Ian called at 9 p.m, voice precise, the kind that says, "I check things." "Barbara, Gail recommended you. 4 studio apartments, all on Airbnb. I need someone reliable, someone whose work I don't have to double check. Gail's rating jumped half a point in 2 weeks. You're doing?" "Yes." Terms, 150 per turnover. Cash, Fridays. Studios are 500 square feet, faster than Gail's 1 bedroom. But I inspect, white glove, once a week, windowsill, curtain rod, door handle. Dust on the glove, different conversation. Deal? Barbara paused. In the pause, years of infection control committees, quarterly surface swabs, UV lamp inspections, where a white glove would have been a kindergarten exercise compared to what the hospital demanded. Inspect away. Ian Harlan checked his properties the way surgeons check instruments, systematically, without emotion, and with an expectation of perfection that left no room for close enough. First week, Friday, he walked through all 4 studios with a white cotton glove, the kind waiters wear, running a finger along the doorframe header, the top of the medicine cabinet, the ventilation grill. The glove came back clean. He set an envelope on the counter without a word, and Barbara understood. For Ian, silence was praise, the way sterile on a lab report was praise. No need to say more. Clearance to continue was the compliment. By mid-December, the routine was set. Gail's apartment 4 to 5 times a week. Ian's 4 studios averaging 2 to 3 turnovers daily. Total about 18 cleanings a week. Barbara was up at 6, bag packed. Gloves, 3 types of cloths, blue for dust, yellow for wet surfaces, green for glass. Chrome cleaner, disinfectant, scrub brush for grout, trash bags. And on the road by 8:30. 2 turnovers before lunch, 1 or 2 after. Home by 4, back aching, knees humming from tile floors, hands red despite the gloves, because industrial cleaners seep through nitrile at the molecular level, and molecules don't respect brand names. End of first month, gross about $2,800 from turnovers. Minus supplies, professional grade bought in bulk online, cheaper per unit, better results, $160. Minus gas, $80. Minus self-employment tax set aside, she'd registered on the IRS website, the librarian helped, same one who helped everyone. About $170. Minus 1 broken coffee mug at Ian's, replaced same day from her own pocket, because Ian was not the kind of man you tell, accidents happen. Net, roughly $2,200. Plus Social Security, $1,620. Minus dental payment plan, $500. Free remainder, $33.20. And Barbara wrote it in the notes app and stared at it, the way she used to stare at a patient's vitals when they'd finally stabilized. With relief so physical it felt like sitting down. New winter boots, $65, non-slip soles, because falling on ice between Airbnbs was an expense she couldn't afford in any currency. Cardiologist appointment, $180, self-pay, seen in a week instead of 4 months. First payment to the dentist, on time, and the receptionist said thank you for your prompt payment, in the voice reserved for reliable clients, not for the woman who'd cried on the bench outside. Then Donna, neighbour, 60, retired teacher, bored, a cat she'd started talking to in full sentences. She stopped by for coffee and offered, "Barb, take me along. I clean fast. 100 per unit to me, the rest to you. I just need something to do before the cat starts answering." Barbara thought about it. Her back screamed by evening, Her knees crackled on every staircase. Handing Donna one studio, the easiest, first floor, 500 feet, would save Barbara an hour a day and $100 in chiropractor bills she couldn't afford anyway. Fine, but I train you first. 18 steps, ceiling to floor, every one mandatory. Skip one, the guest notices, the host notices, and the call comes to me, not you. Barb, I taught third grade for 30 years. I can handle 18 steps. Barbara showed her every point, every detail. Why dry before wet? Why doorknobs get 30 seconds of disinfectant contact time? Why sheets get hospital corners? Donna nodded, took notes in a small spiral pad, teacher habit, and said, "Got it." First solo turnover. Barbara checked after. Floors clean, bed made. Glass. One streak in the corner, small. She nodded. Okay. Third day. Ian called. Voice steel. The controlled kind, where the anger is present but leashed. Barbara, come to Maple Street, Unit 2. She drove over. Ian stood in the hallway, phone out, screen showing a guest review. Dirty. Hair on the pillow, streaks on the mirror, dust on the baseboard. 2 out of 5. Would not recommend. Your work? My helpers. I brought her on for this unit. I don't care whose work it is. I care whose name is on the arrangement. My rating dropped from 4.8 to 4.3 on one review. 1 hair and a month of work gone. Each word landed with the weight of a stamp on a document. 1 more and I find someone else. Not for 1 unit, for all 4. I don't need a system where I don't know who's cleaning. I need 1 person. For now, you. For now is the key phrase. Barbara called Donna that evening. Donna, problem. 2-star review, hair, streaks, baseboard. Barb, 1 hair, come on. Donna, 1 hair cost me half a point and nearly 4 units. All of them. I'll be more careful next. There won't be a next time. I'm sorry. Silence. Then a voice no longer cheerful. I thought friends didn't do this to each other. Click. Barbara set the phone down and sat for a long time. Donna was right. Friends don't fire friends. But Barbara couldn't be a friend between 8:30 and 4. That time slot cost $500 a month in dental payments. And those payments were buying teeth she needed to eat. And eating was more urgent than friendship. And knowing this didn't make it feel better. Next day, and the day after, and the week after, Barbara cleaned all turnovers alone. 3, sometimes 4 per day. 6 to 7 hours on her feet, no lunch break. 20 minutes for lunch meant half a bathroom undone, and the bathroom was where ratings lived or died. Guests forgave a squeaky bed, but not a dark line in the shower grout. Her back gave out in the 2nd week of December. Not suddenly, but in a slow, creeping way. The kind that builds during the day and crashes at night. She lay with a heating pad under her spine, took diclofenac twice daily and thought, if this keeps up, an injection. She could give it to herself. She'd given thousands to others. But that was a stopgap, not a fix. The fix was she needed help. Not Donna help. Real help. Someone whose hands knew clean at the reflex level, who wouldn't need to be told why a hair on a pillow isn't a small thing. Friday. Ian arrived with the glove. Walked all 4 studios. Glove, clean. Envelope on the counter. Then, at the door, I have a contact. 2 more units, Birch Street, same format. He needs someone. I recommended you. Can you handle it? Barbara stood in the doorway, gripping the frame. Lower back shooting, left leg numb from an hour on her knees scrubbing grout. 6 units meant 4 to 5 turnovers daily. 8 hours on her feet. I'll think about it, she said. That evening, heating pad, tea, phone. She scrolled her contacts and stopped on a name she hadn't called in 2 years. Vera Steen, HOSP, surgical tech. Vera had worked in the surgical unit of the same county hospital, retired last year, 55. In surgical, clean wasn't a rating. It was the difference between a patient walking out and being carried out. Vera knew this from shifts where a white glove would have been a joke because they used culture swabs and UV lamps, and the standard was measured in colony-forming units per square centimetre. She pressed call. 3 rings. 4. Hello? Surprised. 2 years of silence, then a call. Barbara? Is that you? Vera arrived the next morning. Small, wiry, with lean forearms where every tendon stood visible. Barbara opened the door and recognized her instantly. Not by face, but by posture. The slight forward lean, the readiness to enter and begin, the surgical tech stance she'd seen 1,000 times outside the OR doors. So, Vera said, still in her coat, Gail told me something about apartments, cleaning, and a man with a white glove. I understood none of it, but I understood one thing. You need help. Barbara sat her down, made coffee, strong, black, the way they'd drunk it in the break room between shifts, and explained everything. The tooth, the payment plan, the gloves on the windowsill, the 18 steps, Donna and the hair on the pillow, the 2 new units on Birch Street waiting for an answer. Vera listened, sipping her coffee, and only at the white glove part did she react, one corner of her mouth lifting, half amused, half sad. A white cotton glove? Barb, in surgical we had quarterly culture swabs, bacterial counts, UV lamp scans. If they found a colony on the wall, incident report, written explanation, disciplinary note. His glove is cute. That's why I'm calling you. They agreed in 10 minutes. Vera would take the 2 Birch Street units. Pay? $120 per turnover to Vera, $30 to Barbara as organiser and quality guarantor. Supplies? Barbara bought in bulk for both. Inspection. Barbara checked Vera's work once a week, unannounced. And one more thing. I need you to work from a list. 18 points, ceiling to floor. Not however it feels, not by mood. The list, every time, same order. Barb, I spent 15 years cleaning operating rooms. I have my own list. Show me. It's in my head. Head doesn't count. On paper. Vera gave her a look, the look of a professional being asked to prove what she considers obvious, then nodded. Fine, Commander. Paper it is. That evening, Barbara sat at the kitchen table and did something she'd been carrying in her head since the first turnover at Gale's. She wrote the 18 points down. Took the Notes app, opened a fresh page, and typed. Not from a manual, but from 34 years of muscle memory translated into words. 1. Open window, ventilate 5 minutes. Through to 18. Final clockwise walkthrough from entry door. Visual check every surface. Between them, the order of operations, dry before wet, before glass, before floor. Water temperature by surface. Chrome, cold, because hot water leaves marks. Laminate, warm. Tile, hot. Disinfectant contact time on doorknobs. 30 seconds. The time needed to break the bacterial film, per CDC guidelines she'd memorised from the laminated card above the sink in the procedure room. Sheet making protocol. Hospital corners, 45-degree folds, no wrinkles on the face side. Towel folding standard. Thirds, edge to edge, seam inward. Each point, 1 line. Clean formatting. The same precision that had filled procedure logs for 34 years. Each entry brief, even, legible. The work of a person accustomed to her notes being audited. She emailed the list to the copy shop on Main Street. Print, enlarge to letter size, laminate 2 copies. The girl behind the counter read, "Disinfectant contact time, minimum 30 seconds per CDC surface protocol," and asked, "Is this for a hospital?" Barbara said, "For an apartment." The girl raised her eyebrows but said nothing, and Barbara thought, someday, maybe, for an apartment won't sound surprising, and that will mean the standards have changed, and she'll have had something to do with it. Training Vera took 4 days. Surgical hands remember sequence at the muscle level. Day 1, Barbara demonstrated. Day 2, Vera did it. Barbara corrected. Wring the cloth drier. Excess water swells laminate edges. Day 3, Vera alone. Barbara after with the checklist, marking points in pencil. 17 of 18. Point 14, ventilation grill. Who looks up there? Ian Harlan looks, in a white glove. He's not my host. The standard is 1, my standard, no exceptions. Vera nodded. Fine, Commander. Day 4, 18 of 18. Barbara called Ian. Helper in place, trained to standard, checklist in every closet. Ian listened. Send me the list. 2 hours later. This is more professional than any cleaning company I've hired. Your standard, all 6 units, your lead. From January, Barbara cleaned 4 of Ian's plus Gail's. Vera took Birch Street plus, by February, 3 more from a host named Natalie. Barbara's cut from Vera's turnovers, 30 each. Not much per unit, but across 15 a month it added up, and it bought her back an hour of rest each afternoon. February. Own turnovers about 18 at 150, 2,700. Vera's cut, 450. Minus supplies, transport, tax set aside, 1 replaced vase, net about 2,200. Plus Social Security, 1,620. Minus dental, 500. Free, 3,320. Each month the plan shrank by 1 payment. The dental bridge went in on a Tuesday in May, temporary first, then permanent. White, light, fitting. Barbara bit into an apple on the walk home. Green, firm, bought at the corner stand for $1.50, and chewed on the left side without thinking. Just chewed. The juice ran down her chin. She wiped it with the back of her hand, the same hand that an hour earlier had been in a nitrile glove, and stood on the sidewalk holding the apple, in her work jacket, the handle of a mop poking out of her bag, and felt relief. Quiet, deep, the kind that comes after holding your breath for 7 months and finally letting go. Andy called in late May, voice softer than usual, the voice he used when guilt had been sitting in his chest long enough to become something gentler. Mum, I put together 1,500 for the teeth. Sweetheart, the bridge is in. Paid it off last month. What? How? Long story. Come visit and I'll show you. A pause. The Andy pause, where the picture he held of his mother reshuffled. Not the woman who couldn't afford the dentist, but the woman with 7 Airbnb units, a laminated checklist, and a former surgical tech on staff. Mum, you're still cleaning? 7 units, plus Vera on staff if you count her. We're booked through summer. The longest pause. Then, I'll come down. Memorial Day, with Marina and the kids. He came. Marina walked into Barbara's apartment, looked around, and said the first thing she noticed. It's so clean in here. Not regular clean, hospital clean. Barbara smiled, because hospital clean from her daughter-in-law was not a phrase, but a password, confirming Barbara hadn't changed. She'd just found a new room for the same skill. Andy stood in the hallway, looking at his mother. In house clothes, an apron, a new smile that showed both rows, even and white, and said quietly, Mum, nice teeth. And that was his apology, the only kind he could manage. and it was enough. Morning. Kitchen. On the table, 2 laminated checklists for Natalie's new units, ready for Vera to pick up. Beside them, the Notes app open to May. Dental plan. Closed. 0 balance. The word deficit, which had appeared on every page since November, was gone. On the windowsill, a box of nitrile gloves, new, 200 count, just opened. Barbara pulled out a pair, slipped them on, the familiar snap, small and sharp, the sound that had started every workday for 34 years. First in the procedure room, before the morning's first IV, now in the kitchen, before the day's first apartment. Same hands, same snap, different work, same clean. To wrap up this story, let's look at what Barbara did to reach her goals and cover her needs. What did Barbara do? She sat outside a dental clinic with a $6,500 treatment plan and a negative checking balance. Instead of waiting for her son or deferring treatment until something broke, she pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves and cleaned a stranger's Airbnb. The same hands, the same standards, different walls. Within 3 months, she was cleaning 7 units, had trained a former surgical technician to her 18-point protocol, and paid off the dental plan early.
3 lessons.
First, your professional standard is your competitive edge. Barbara didn't learn to clean. She'd been cleaning to medical grade for 34 years. The difference between her and every other cleaner was 30 seconds of disinfectant contact time, hospital corners on the sheets, and a clockwise final walkthrough. Hosts paid more because guests left 5 stars, and 5 stars meant higher nightly rates, and higher rates meant hosts could afford 150 instead of 80. Second, write it down. 18 points in her head became 18 points on laminated paper, posted in every unit. Teachable, checkable, transferable. An unwritten standard dies with the person. A written one becomes a business. Third, scale with the right person. Donna was a friend who cleaned almost. Vera was a professional who cleaned to spec. The difference cost Barbara a 2-star review, 4 endangered units, and 1 ended friendship, and taught her that hiring for warmth instead of skill is a luxury she couldn't afford, and neither can you. You have a skill you've used for decades and stopped valuing. Say it out loud, in the comments. Someone will read it and realize theirs has the same hidden price tag. Hit that like button so this story reaches the people who need it right now. And subscribe. Every week we share stories of people who stopped being embarrassed and started earning with what their hands already knew.